I had someone float this idea by me, and I don't know that I'm positive about what I should think about this. So I thought I'd run it by you and see what your feedback was. So I was working with some product owners last week, and I was doing an advanced product owner class. And one of the things that we discussed was how do you organize work better? How do you make your backlog the best it could possibly be? And one of the product owners was talking to me, and this individual said, I break my product backlog into 9 zones. And I thought to myself, I said, 9 zones? That sounds overly complex or overly complicated. And they assured me there wasn't. They said, there's just like in the Olympics, where there's a bronze, a silver, and a gold. I said, okay, I get that. They said, most people in their backlog have epics, features, and user stories. I said, okay. I said, so far this is relatable. It's not too far out there. So we were talking about how you can take things from an ideation stage, roll them into an epic stage, break them further into a feature stage, and then eventually into a user story. But that each of those had like a bronze, silver, and gold layer. And I was like, ooh, this is getting interesting. So now, if you pictured each one of the epics, features, and stories as swim lanes that are broken down into each other, and then you cross section that with a bronze, silver, or gold level, it made sense. So I said, okay. I said, so this is like a backlog maturity assessment. And that really that lit me up a little bit. I was like, that sounds good. I think that more people need to take a look at their backlog and do some of this assessment. So if you think about the way like an architecture is curated, you have things that are raw, things that are enriched, and things that are truly curated. And I think everything that you add as a wish should be considered in the raw layer. If it's just a wish, it's definitely in the raw layer. If it's something that is being refined and you're still working on refinement, it goes in the enriched layer. And when it's ready to be communicated to stakeholders and processed, it hits the curated layer. If you think about it and you do the cross section that way, it makes a lot of sense. So, for example, if I deal with epics, the scope of the product can be defined by a business model canvas, a project charter, or whatever you're trying to use, right? If you have an epic on data platform, so an epic on data platform and a product backlog with the objective of making it easier and easily available consolidated insights about who our members are. Okay, that makes sense. This provides guidelines about what to prioritize, but it also helps to exclude scope from prioritization. So, for example, insights need to be optimized, and you need to optimize your internal processes. Even if the data is available from the source system, you need to think about it, and you need to decide that it's out of scope until we decide to start working on an epic that addresses the internal process optimization. So, at a raw stage, an epic is a larger, logical part of a product. For example, a business capability, enterprise architecture, or domain-driven design. Enriched would be the scope of an epic can be described using OKRs or another format describing high-level business objectives. A conceptual diagram is also useful, or a storyboard, or a journey map. If the epic is an AI model, the AI canvas is a well-suited format. If we're talking about curated, it's simple to set up a dashboard in Azure DevOps that lists the epics on a product backlog with a link to a description, a presentation, and a product vision. This is relevant information for product management. So if you're trying to get it to curated, you need to get it to the point where it's easily consumable. Let's talk about features. So epics are broken down into features, right? And as a consequence, the scope of the feature must be within the scope of the epic. It's important to note that not all features in an epic need to be in the same zone. If an epic has 5 features, then one could be curated, one could be enriched, and the rest could be in raw. That is, among other things, this is the essence of what it means to be agile. Status can be used to communicate which zone a feature is in, just like user stories, so it lets you know exactly where you are. So the features are the key to having a healthy backlog. The effort put into maturing features and aligning their scope with stakeholders is well spent because it ensures higher quality in the user stories and less rework from the team. So if you think about this conceptually is where the POBAFATA reside. So the product owner, business analyst, functional analyst, and technical analyst reside in this playground. If you think about raw, a suitable level of granularity is, for example, a business process or a use case complete with alternative flows, business rules, and non-functional requirements. Enriched would be all the good. Old diagram techniques are suitable for describing features such as process flows, use cases, information models. Just remember that an information model cannot stand alone. It needs to be complemented by something that describes the context of the data that we'll be using, including who the users are. When working with data for analytics, a description of the decisions that the users need to be able to make with the data is well suited. If you're talking about curated, features in an epic can be, for example, presented on an Azure DevOps dashboard with a description included so you have a coherent view of the scope of the complete epic. It can also be described in a Visio file or a wiki page or a Jira board or a Miro board. Often different epics have different stakeholders. By setting up separate dashboards with the scope of features within an epic, information and stakeholders they become targeted to their specific need. So it makes it easier for you to consume. Now, if you're looking at backlog items, this is the gold right here. If you're looking at backlog items, features are broken down into user stories, and as a consequence, the scope of the story must fit within the scope of the feature. Once again, makes sense. The feature provides the team with the required context to create a future-proof design and to make sure that necessary work related to the architecture and security is also included in the backlog. So raw would be user stories are identified and are ready to be refined. Enriched is the user stories complete with description and acceptance criteria, and test cases can be used as an alternative to the acceptance criteria. It's ready to be refined. And then curated could be a Jira dashboard with the scope of each feature can be expanded to also include the scope of the user stories. Remember, description and acceptance criteria can also be included in a query displayed on a dashboard. It's easy for stakeholders to follow progress of a product development if they can follow the progress of a related feature rather than drilling all the way down to the sprint backlog. So if you're trying to use story mapping, if you have stories that are larger in nature, you're going to find that story mapping is going to be more difficult. So I tell people objective stack ranking, figuring out how your hierarchy works, working through some of the things that are challenges for most teams and organizations is going to help you really capitalize on effectively using Agile to solve your problems. Now, while Azure DevOps or Jira or any tool is not the answer to all your problems, find ways to capture things at all three levels, at the epic level, the feature level, and the user story. Find ways that you can drill down into them. Find ways that you can then take those and categorize, flag, classify into raw, enriched, and curated. And then what you'll have epics that have bronze, silver, and gold layers. You'll have features that are bronze, silver, and gold. And this will show progression, and it will allow people to see that work needs to be properly attended to, and that planning does take place. And the thing to keep in mind is just because you have these 9 different sections doesn't mean that a backlog item or a feature or a epic needs to spend a large amount of time in any one of these categories. It could only be there for a short amount of time, and that's good enough. But what it reflects is that we were thoughtful about the ideation and discovery concept and didn't just jump straight to delivery based on a whim or what a subject matter expert said. That's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.